Wait on Nancy, wait on Nancy. Hello everyone, welcome back. Okay, this video is entitled Making Space for Conception. And I mean that in all the senses, in the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical senses. So we're just going to start spiritually. It's also all connected, right? Making space, what does that actually mean? Do you have space in your life for a child? Okay, if we're consciously calling in, barring accidents, and if we're not calling it in, but if we are calling it in, do we have space? One of my friends in acupuncture school worked with one of the preeminent Chinese medicine doctors in fertility at her clinic in San Francisco, Dr. Liang. And she said that these humans would come in and they'd be like, oh, well, I can't come to this appointment because I have this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing. And actually, can you cancel here? And so they want to get pregnant. So they're going through fertility treatments. But if you can't actually make a meeting work, if you can't come to a treatment, like, how are you going to make space to, like, be laid out during the first trimester of pregnancy and then actually care for a human being? So, how's your life right now? What are you doing in your life that would give you the space to gestate an entire human being and then care for them? Okay. Are you happy? Are you happy in your life? We talked about the Bao Mai and the heart chi, the womb chi, womb blood needing to go up to meet the heart chi and the pericardium and the opening there. If our heart is closed, if our heart is tight, because the emotion of the heart is joy, the heart is the emperor. The heart sends the blood. We're not going to be able to send the blood to the womb to hold and receive this child, this egg, this sperm, if we're okay. So that's something you really want to ask people, if they're trying to conceive, like, are they in the right partnership? Do they really want this baby? Do they hate their job? Like, life chooses all kinds of circumstances to come through. I'm just offering you my understanding on how our emotions affect our physiology, and this is a spiritual and physiological. Another spiritual, karma. Karma is the notion of having a life purpose. Like, is it time? Have you dreamed of this? Is this really your life path? Again, what is your why? Is this because is what everybody else is doing, or are you supposed to go off and do something different with your life? Again, no judgment calls on any of this, but I'm asking us to really critically think about the situation we're in, especially with our people, and whether it is in alignment with our divine highest truth to create a life right now. If it's in divine alignment with our birthing folks who are wanting to call in that seed. And then, yes, once again, our partners. I've known a few different people who, including myself, before I found my partner, who wasn't the one I wanted, who wasn't what I saw in my future with my brain, I'd never been pregnant. So I thought I couldn't have children. I thought I was infertile. I thought maybe I'm just supposed to be a medicine woman and that's my path, and I'm not supposed to raise babies. And I'd had partners in less than noble ways do their best to get me pregnant. But my son, I strongly believe my child chose his father, because he was the one to steward in that life with me. So back to the first agreements, I believe that children choose who they come through. And I've known stories of humans who, they have a 10-year long relationship and then they break up and they have sex with a random, and all of a sudden you're pregnant. And you're like, whoa, I believe that baby chose that human for their genes, for their ancestral karma, for their ancestral trauma, for their ancestral resiliency, so we as the humans in this lifetime, in this meat sack, can work toward our own healing for our antepasados and our descendants. That's what I believe. Okay, so that's spiritual stuff. I'm sure there's a lot more that we could talk about there. The spiritual realm is vast, and some of it makes sense and some of it doesn't make any sense. So much of it is the great mystery, which I've talked about. The great mystery means that we're not supposed to know everything. And we can do our best to communicate with spirit and listen to our deep knowing, but we're never supposed to know all the things. That would be too easy. Mental. Okay, this is one that comes up a lot, is grasping. If we are holding on tight to an idea, that clumps the chi. Like fixating on something clumps the chi. It disallows the blood from flowing. It's like thinking, ruminating. There's no release there. And in order to be a receptive recipient vessel of a life, you have to open. You have to open to receive. Okay? So thinking too much about something and fixating on it, worrying, also it uses a lot of energy. So it can make your chi deficient. And we talk about this with the spleen. The spleen is the organ in Chinese medicine that's responsible for digesting thoughts and food. So if we're constantly ruminating and thinking about what about this, what about that, even if we are somebody who is super academic and wants to go the Western route of doing all the charting and basal body temperature, etc., the fixation can keep us from the goal. Based on how our mental state affects our physiology. Deficient chi leads to deficient blood. So if we're over, we're using our chi, and then our spleen is unable to make the blood as efficiently, and we need that blood in order to anchor in the fetus. Okay? And then just in general, most of the time, if we're thinking, we're not embodying. Like when you're full force running, when you're dancing, when you're yoga-ing, you don't really have a lot of space to be deep in thought. You're like in your body. So not only is that helpful to keep the blood moving in your body, but it's helpful to allow the energy to be embodied so that your body becomes stronger and is able to gestate a human life. Okay, so very muchly so, mentally fixating is going to be antithetical to the outcome of fertility. Emotional. Okay, stuck emotions means stuck blood. When we're holding on to old stuff, especially anger and resentment, our livers are responsible for the smooth flow of chi and for storing the blood. So when we have old trauma that we haven't worked through, when we are like not being seen by our partners and hating them, there's a restriction that happens. And once again, our blood needs to be flowing freely. This is highly related to menstruation. In my practice, there is a high correlation between people who have menstrual pain and other menstrual problems, and there being a lot of repressed anger and repressed emotions. Another one is fear. So fear is the emotion of the kidneys, which houses our primordial essence. So if we're scared of things a lot of the time, I've heard of a few miscarriages happening now because of COVID. And just the nature of the universe and the environment at this time, the fear can deplete the kidney essence, which then would not be strong enough to house a fetus. Yes, the opposite of fear is will. So using our energy to offer to our bodies in a way that receives life, like eating good food and resting, and we'll get into that. But fear can have take away from our ability to hold life. Once again, love, is our heart open? Is our heart able to spread the blood around? Worrisomeness with the spleen, can the spleen make the blood? And then with the breath, with the lungs, with grief, the lungs are unable to fully breathe in the inspiration, which then helps the blood move if there's unresolved grief. So unresolved grief I've seen as well are, I've had patients who are unable to conceive because there's a previous miscarriage or abortion, and there was no closure, there was no ability to grieve that life that was lost. It might have been compartmentalized, or just this like thing that's hanging there. So grief can also disallow us from fully opening to receive. The opposite of grief is receiving inspiration. Okay. All right, and then I have here desire, and it's kind of like, do you really want this? Is this just, are you doing this because you think it's what you're supposed to do? Because your mom wants you to get pregnant, because your partner wants to have a baby. I had a patient who couldn't decide whether she wanted a baby and wasn't sure if she wanted to take the course or wanted to get fertility treatments, and I did a reading with her, and what came through was like such powerful priestess energy that she had not had space to interact with yet. And like her guides and ancestors were like, no baby right now. You learn your power. You learn your priestessness. And when I reflected that to her, she was like, boom, 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 boom. Oh, but she was like, nah, maybe I should have a baby. She like wasn't clear on it, but she was kind of trying to. But when she got the reading, she's like, oh yeah, that's totally right on. I don't want to be a mom right now. But she needed somebody to reflect that to her and let it be okay, because it was her familial expectation that she was just supposed to, she turned 32 or whatever. She's like, I'm supposed to have a baby. But that wasn't in alignment with her divine highest truth. So she's still exploring her priestessness and has yet to conceive a baby. And I think she might. But the point is, it wasn't her, her emotional space, her spiritual space was not for that, and is not for that right now, according to what I saw. Okay, so we can, again, I believe that everything physical is a manifestation of the spiritual, and it's all connected, but practically, let's talk about physical. In my understanding and my knowing and my experience as somebody who has been pregnant and birthed a baby, if you want to get pregnant, you have to treat your body like you're already pregnant. When I got my partner, when my partner showed up in the divine way that he did, which is another story, and once I decided that he was my person and that I did want us to work toward a family, it's like I started putting on weight. I started eating a bunch of more food. I got like dimples in places I had never had dimples before. I just felt like nesty and happy, and I was like, like the oxytocin high was already there. And it was like I was like pregnant within a few months. And there's another story to that, which I might as well go into it right now. Because it ties into everything we just talked about. Once again, I didn't think I could get pregnant. I was getting older. I was worried about getting pregnant, and I went to see a reader, and the reader told me that, oh, you're not going to get pregnant for a while. It would like mess up your career, and yeah, you don't even have to use protection because you're not going to get pregnant. And so I was just kind of like, oh, well, and I went and I told my mom, like, I don't think I'm going to have babies, like, and I just relaxed. I stopped worrying about being pregnant, and I think my womb kind of went, and I was pregnant in like a few weeks. And the seer told me I wasn't going to get pregnant, but that made me think and believe, and also it's come up in other spiritual situations, that Spirit tells us what we need to hear in order to move us toward our divine highest purpose. So kind of like in the Matrix, where the Oracle didn't tell Neo he's the one, but he was the one. But she's like, if I would have told you you were the one, you would have ran off and did something else. You had to come to that conclusion on your own. So for me, I needed to let go of the expectation that I was supposed to get pregnant in order to get pregnant. And as soon as I literally felt my body go, and I just was like, I'm going to be with my partner, and I'm going to have sex, and I'm going to do all this and whatever. And then my body got pregnant like that. But not because I was trying. And then my other patient I was talking about, who went to the Ayurvedic practitioner, one of the things they told her was, don't try to get pregnant. Like, you need to stop trying to get pregnant. As soon as she stopped trying to get pregnant, she got pregnant. Granted, she was on herbs and a diet, a strict diet from the Ayurvedic practitioner. But there's a huge component of, like, surrender in pregnancy that I've seen from a holistic healthcare perspective. Okay, so treating the body like it's already pregnant. Eat a lot, rest a lot, get lots of fats, healthy fats, because that's what's going to give space for the baby to like rest and give you space to rest. It's also going to develop the baby's brain. We'll talk about that in pregnancy. And nest, like make your house, make a place for the baby to live in your body and in your home. Okay? Physical blood deficiency is a reason why we wouldn't get pregnant. So blood deficiency isn't so much like you don't have enough blood. It's like your blood isn't strong. Like if you look at blood cells like warriors or soldiers, blood deficiency is like having like soldiers as opposed to like soldiers. Okay. So to build our blood, prenatal vitamins are good. Plant-based prenatal vitamins are the best. But just eating a lot of good vitamin-rich food, B vitamins, dark-colored foods. From a Chinese medicine perspective, it's a law of signatures. So eating blood builds the blood. Eating beets, eating dark leafy greens, eating good meat with good fats, happy meat. Eating enough. We have a strong thing in our culture where we're like not well nourished, and then we just like gorge on something that's like heavy and fatty, but we're unable to process it because our body needs to eat a lot, or our body needs to, I don't know, we have so many eating things in this society as far as our ancestors ate a good amount, but not gluttonous in one sitting, and our bodies still have a hard time processing that, right? Black sesame seeds, black beans, those are kidney foods. Green things are liver foods to help the liver go. Red things that look like blood, actual animals that are blood. Bone broth is huge kidney essence tonic. My comadre y maestra Panquetzani of Indigimama talks so much about the importance of bone broth and fermented foods in gut health. So fermented foods that help our guts be well, which will help our wombs be well. I highly recommend anybody here to take her Matriz y Concha class or her A Cerrar las Caderas class, which is very specific Mexican traditional medicine view on all of this stuff, and a lot more practice oriented as opposed to like cosmological worldview oriented, but that too. She's a badass. Take her classes. Pay her. So we want to build our blood. We want to eat enough and we want to eat well. We want to eat good food. Okay? Again, blood stasis. Blood stasis leads to stuck blood. Blood stasis is stuck blood, which means blood doesn't flow. So we have to do our work. Like, we have to cry. We have to rage. We have to move our bodies so that our blood is healthy and moving. We have to get massages. We have to like tune into that traumatizing time we got jumped or we had that sexual trauma experience, and we have to let our bodies do the work to release that trauma. So much of infertility has to do with unprocessed trauma in the womb, y'all. Same with so much of pathological things in the womb like endometriosis and tumors, etc., have to do with unprocessed trauma that gets stuck there. Yeah. There are healers who can help you. Okay? Spleen not holding. So if we're worrying too much, if our diets are full of damp, heavy foods that are taking away from our spleen's ability to properly transform food into blood, that's going to be a problem. And also, if our spleen is so tired from doing so much, working full-time, working nights, taking care of other kids, supporting your partner and they're not doing anything, also like abusive relationships, that's going to be an interesting thing in there to throw in there. We're talking about spleen not holding the blood. If our spleen is taxed, our spleen can't hold the blood in the vessels, which is part of its job. So we might be bleeding a lot, therefore rendering us blood deficient. And when we're blood deficient, the yin and the yang follow. So we really need to know where we're spending our energy and if we are seeping out our energy in ways that would render us deficient at all in any way. This also accounts for or includes the effects of injuries as well as the abuse of substances. Okay. Chemistry is a huge one with our partners. Okay. The first time I smelled my partner, I was like, that's my baby daddy. Okay, there's some primal pheromonal something that dictates who would create viable offspring with us. There are articles about this that you can research, but look at the outcomes of pheromones and body chemistry attraction with children and gestational potentials. Okay? And then once again, this idea of having a receptive body, of opening, of calling in, of yielding, of receiving. How many humans that have had to work and go aren't used to receiving? And our pregnancy is literally the receiving of life into you. So are you a place that holds? That's the question here. Are you a place that can hold life? Is your person who wants to get pregnant a place that can hold life? And if not, how do we get there? Do we eat more and better? Do we break up with that abusive person? Do we really check in with our spiritual agreements in this lifetime that may or may not be allowing us to receive this life? Okay? So this is week 2, fertility. We will go more in depth with how to eat in week 3. But really, when it comes to housing a baby in our bodies, we need to be eating red foods, black foods, healthy, happy meats. We need to be eating enough. And we need to be building our bodies in a way for them to be a house for a soul to reside in for 10 moons. All right, thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Wait nang sin, wait nang sin.